Welcome in, everybody, to a special Wednesday edition. Can't even speak of GC Live. Talking Tuesday nights. National Signing Day is in the books for South Carolina. And because of that, that's why we decided to push the show back to Wednesday night. And it's a good thing we did, because it was a day that a lot of people remember here in Columbia for quite some time. Let's get right into it, though. As always, intern Joe is with us. He's rocking the Shane Beamer shades.
Oh, yeah, Mike.
Wearing that. And joining us also, let's just get right to it. It's Gamecock commit. He's in the car right now. That's why it's a little dark, but that's all right. That is Dante Reno, class of 2024 commit. And Dante, let's just get right to it. I know he's not in your class, but guys like yourself, Pup, of course, for 2023, you guys stayed on Nicholas Harbor right from the jump. I know that there's a lot of factors that go into a decision like this. I mean, shoot, you're going through it, right, as a high school kid. So I bring this up because what does a day like this mean for someone like yourself, guys that were doing everything they could to get Nicholas Harbor to commit to South Carolina?
Yeah, I think it was huge. Obviously, just Nick, and congratulations to him and his family. It was a big-time get for all of Gamecock Nation today. I'm sure every fan in the country that is a Gamecock fan is going crazy right now. But it's just a big momentum shift that I think the 23 class, they already had towards the end of their class, they had a big one. I think the 24 class going on right now, I think we have also another big momentum shift. And that's how kind of recruiting works nowadays. Like, you see somebody commit, and then you're like, oh, maybe I should jump in, and then you jump in, and the next person jumps in. So with Nick committing today, I think it's just going to echo like a big wave around the recruiting world, I think. And I think a lot of people, like in the comments of his commitment post today, I saw a lot of 24 kids that were commenting on it with Gamecocks and stuff like that. So it was huge, obviously. And yeah, like you said, I mean, Pup did a great job in the class of 23, did a great job with Nick. And I think towards the end of it, some of the 24 kids in our class also did a good job too. But Pup really led this one, and him, Tree, Dez, they did a really good job.
Intern Joe, what's on your mind?
What a day, Mike. What a day. I'm wearing my Drop Yo Nuts shirt currently.
No, time out. Can we so 1 sec? I got to stop you there, okay?
Okay.
I got to stop you there. Intern Joe, when I look back, when your career is done in South Carolina and Gamecock Central and all that, and I hope that's not for a long, long time, one of my favorite memories with you, I had no idea who the heck you were. This was during the COVID era, Dante. And all the press conferences done via Zoom, right? And I see this student reporter in his living room, and there is a wall of beer boxes on the wall, and it's like Busch Light. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Intern Joe, what you see is what you get from him. Walks into today's press conference with a Drop Your Nut shirt in true Intern Joe fashion. And you know what? He's not doing it for attention. That's just Joe. And this is why we love Intern Joe. So, Intern Joe, I'm sorry. Continue.
This way, Mike. I appreciate you pointing that out. I'm just genuinely excited. And I happened to be out at lunch before the press conference and wore this out in excitement for the day, and then didn't have time to change. Might be the real story, but you didn't hear it from me. What a day, Mike. Really, honestly, I wrote up a little story for Gamecock Central. It got published, I think, around 5 o'clock. About just kind of the reactions on Twitter and everywhere from Gamecock Nation, just on the Nicholas Harbor signing. It's been huge. The outpouring has been absolutely massive, and credit to Dante. Dante was on Nick hard, him and Pup. And I know Beamer couldn't really talk about Dante in the presser, but he certainly alluded to his efforts too, on just being able to reach out to a guy like that and stay on him. And Beamer said, he talked to Pup this morning, and Pup was like, we got him. And Shane was like, I certainly doesn't feel that way from me. So shout out to Dante and Pup and Big Tree for being able to recruit, Nick behind the scenes and really stick South Carolina on his mind and be there for him. Really, his future teammates are really the ones who got it done, it seems like. So credit to you guys, and what a day to be a Gamecock, Mike.
Hey, real quick, I see a comment here. asking why someone's wearing sunglasses and why someone's in the dark. Dante is giving us time while he drives back. Okay.
Mhm.
Intern Joe, if you've been following the program for the last couple months, this goes back to the comments that obviously were made going into the Kentucky game, right? Actually going all the way back to SEC media days, and then Beamer threw the shades on. So I'm not even going to throw the comment up there, but just to address that is why. And again, Dante is driving back. Dante doesn't have to do this right now. So, if you guys would rather, tune in and watch the 6:00 news in the Columbia market and hear stuff that's already been said, have at it, or you can listen to Dante Reno. I'd rather do that. So, come on, give me the professional journalism crap. Get the hell out of here, Scott. Dante, I do want to ask you this, though. You're going through this as someone, again, you're invested into this program. You're going through this and you're paying attention to it in live time. I know you have conversations and have had conversations with Harbor. I know you've had conversations with other guys that are in your class, in the class of 2023 as well. But you go through this, and obviously at some point, you're not going to be able to hear back from Harbor as much. What can you explain to us what today was like for you? Because in a sense, you were kind of just like a fan or a media member. You're probably watching on like the rest of us.
Yeah, I think it was huge just obviously for me, because me and Nick were really close, just talking and stuff like that, especially throughout the summer when he was going on his OVs, and his recruitment was a little bit longer than most people's going into now. So it was huge, but I think towards the end of his recruitment and most people's recruitment, they like to keep things quiet with everybody they're talking to. And happened with Cam Pringle, happened with everybody. So I think it was obviously, he went to Oregon. I'm sure he had a great time there, but it was huge for everybody, huge for me, and just obviously, like you said, like being a fan and just seeing Nick be able to do it the way he wanted.
Looks like we're losing Dante a little bit again. Dante Reno, class of 2024, joining us. Appreciate just the time that he's giving us right now. And Dante, when you get you back on, we'll have you kind of continue to comment on everything. But look, and we'll get into it too with the recruiting prediction machine, because I know there's a lot of people that are probably curious about that. We talked about it at the beginning of the week and how that works. And I'm so glad that, I asked Shane at the very end of the press conference today to kind of give us a look as to what was going on between that text message that he received, or audio message, excuse me, which is very funny if you haven't heard. I say funny now, but how he didn't understand how audio message worked, and how he woke up and he didn't know if that was actually a dream / nightmare, or if it actually happened, because the audio message just disappeared completely. So we'll get into that as well. I do want to ask this, though. If you are there, Dante, if you're back with us.
Yeah, I got you.
What has been the reception so far from either people that you have talked to that are already committed to South Carolina, whether it be 23, 24 classes, or just some of the guys that are out there? Have you had a chance to talk to some people that have not committed to South Carolina, that are looking at USC, and they're kind of just like, whoa, like what? This is major.
Yeah, I think it's the standard that the 23 class set is really high right now. I think they're 16th nationally right now, and I think our class is 7 or 8. So I think it's just from what the recruits are telling me and telling other kids that are committed in our class, Cam, Wendell, and Michael. It's just they want to join too and help change the whole culture and whole of everything of South Carolina, and be the first recruiting class to be top 5 or be top 10. And a lot of kids in the 24 class, they want to come in and change everything with the 23 class and the 22 class that Coach Beamer brought in. So everybody that I'm talking to and that they're recruiting they're all bought in. And I think it's a great way to obviously start our 24 class. I think there's going to be a lot of commits in the next coming couple weeks, the next couple months.
Intern Joe, for you, I know you've been down here the last couple months, obviously with me working remotely for most of it, back in Columbia, obviously for this week. But you've seen just the mood with Beamer, right? The ups, the downs. We followed it all season long, right? In the momentum that they were able to create to end the regular season. I say all this because how would you compare? Because I know you were there today. with me during Beamer's press conference. How would you compare Beamer's mood today in comparison to some of the highlights we have seen over the last couple of months with South Carolina football?
Mike, I was actually kind of worried about it leading up to this recruitment, as wild as it has been with Nick's saga, if you will. I was kind of worried. I was sitting at home. I'm like, uh-oh, if he doesn't commit, Shane is not going to be happy. So I think Shane was as lively as ever. The energy that I got from him was proud. He was really, really proud of his staff and his team, and also Coach Fry too. Shout out Coach Fry for being able to get the track side of things done. And Coach Fry talked a little bit, and we'll get into that later about what he said and everything. But the energy I got off of Shane was that he was proud, of his work, number one, and proud of his staff and everyone in the building. It was a very full circle moment. All hands in on deck. And yes, he was a lot more lively than we've seen him before. And this is the biggest recruit, arguably, in during his tenure. So I think he's certainly excited about it. And yeah, Mike, his energy was great, very, very good from Coach Beamer. And I was worried about it if he didn't commit. I was almost afraid to ask a question if he didn't, but thank God, man. And all that hard work paid off, and you could certainly feel it throughout the building for sure.
Dante, I know you've been asked this a million times, and you're probably going to be asked this even more until your signing day, and going to get asked a lot of questions, but I think you understood that when you committed to South Carolina as early as you did before the start of your junior year. I think with the world that we live in with NIL, it's so quick for people to be like, all right, he's only going there because they must be paying him. I mean, it's incredible how a couple days ago, depending on where you were reading stuff, especially outside of the Columbia area, if you haven't been paying attention to the Gamecocks for the last year plus, I don't think a lot of people from a national standpoint took South Carolina very seriously going into this recruitment. And then as we got closer and closer to Wednesday, and of course, we'll get into it with the recruiting prediction machine, how those percentages went up and down, fluctuated a little bit. I think some people started to realize like, oh shoot, like South Carolina's really in this. And now there's some, and it comes with the territory, and Beamer addressed it today, that will assume South Carolina bought Harbor. Okay. Certainly that's, not the case. But I bring that up, Dante, because as someone that has committed to this program, and you're seeing firsthand, and they're still recruiting you because it's a process until you actually sign. And again, we've asked you this before, but can you explain to people what is going on at South Carolina that has players like yourself, players like Nicholas Harbor, so determined that this is the place to be right now? Because again, I think from the national standpoint, people aren't realizing what's going on at USC.
Yeah, that's a great question. But back to like the whole NIL point and stuff like that. I mean, that's all when you play, and that was the whole meaning of NIL is you get the money like as you play and you build your own brand and stuff like that. I mean, buying players and stuff like that. I know a bunch of some people also do that around the country and stuff like that. But the biggest reason why I went to South Carolina, why I'm sure everybody else is committed to South Carolina, is the relationships that you build with the staff. They're second to none. I mean, in the country. I mean, Coach Beamer. I mean, he talked to my mom on Mother's Day last year. He was the only head coach in the country to do that, and he was the only coach actually in the country to do that. So it's just like the little things that he does and his staff does that I think make the whole recruiting process so much easier when you're deciding. Especially, I mean, for Nick too, and I'm sure everybody else. I mean, there's a fine line of recruiting where you can see the real from the fake. And I think Coach Beamer and his staff, he does a really good job of hiring the right people, and he has the right people in his program. And obviously, me being a coach's son, I can tell who's fake and who's real. And Coach Beamer, he's been real since day one. And his whole staff's been real with me since day one. So I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people are starting to realize now in the 24 class, and they did in the 23 class. So it's going to be really something special.
I'm sure you are going to be excited regardless of what happened today. South Carolina moves up now to number 16 in this year's recruiting class, one of the highest they've had in quite some time, over 50% blue chip players. That's the first time that's happened since 2014. I'm bringing these things up, Dante, because, again, regardless of what was going to happen today, the buzz, the excitement, it was going to be there. Would it have felt like a gut punch to some people? I'm sure. But the fact that it worked out the way it did and Harbor's going there, how much more excited are you now to get to South Carolina? Again, I'm sure you're going to be excited regardless, but the fact that it happens now, there's going to be more of a spotlight on USC.
Yeah, I think there is, and obviously, I mean, players want to play with great players, and they want to recruit the people that they want to recruit, and the relationships that we have with Nick, that he built with the players on the team and the recruits and all those people. I mean, he had a really good relationship with Cam Pringle too, so it's just the relationships that you're going to have with those guys, and it's going to be like, it's crazy. Like the relationships that you have with them now is going to last forever. And they're going to be your best friends throughout college. And on a random Tuesday night, you might go to the facility with them and go watch film and go chop it up, eat in the dining hall or something like that. So just the relationships that you build with them, and that the staff is kind of really harping on to have within their program, and that culture that Coach Beamer is building, and he talks about all the time, is love. And it's real. And it's real with the recruits, with all the group chats that we have and everything along those lines. So it's what he's building is going to be really special.
Someone asked, I know he can't speak on it, but I wish Dante could say if his buddy Mazio is a welcome home. Yeah, he can't talk about that one. We'll be able to kind of talk about the conversations that you've been having with, because I want to ask you this. Obviously, Mazio has not gone public with what he'll be doing quite yet. I know that you have been in conversations with him. I know you've been in conversations with a lot of these players. You especially just mentioned with Cam Pringle. The guys that have committed to South Carolina publicly, especially that class of 2024, which is shaping up to be absolutely incredible. I mean, what, five 4-stars already? 4 stars, something like that. Dante, I bring that up because, again, not to put this to the side, but I know we only have you for a couple more minutes. The way that 2024 class is looking, my goodness, so special. Can you tell us some of the things that you've been trying to do and some of the other guys in your class, especially the ones that have now committed, and how they're probably trying to do what you've been doing, which is recruit even more for that class?
Yeah, Cam's doing a great job of recruiting the two alignment that I think everybody knows, Josiah and Blake. So he's doing a really good job with that. But yeah, I mean, back to the Mazio, I mean, that's his deal. He's going to commit whenever he wants to commit. I mean, we've been in talks and stuff like that, but I mean, we honestly have no idea where he's going to go right now. And obviously, that's my guy, and I've been recruiting him really hard. I know Cam's been recruiting him really hard too. So we obviously hope he comes to South Carolina. But his recruitment, he had just decommitted a couple months ago from Tennessee. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I mean, the 24 class, like you said, we're trying to be the best one ever in South Carolina history. And I think we're on track to do that right now. But it's just about building a relationship with the guys so that when they do come down to that final commitment day, they know it's South Carolina. So, I mean, Cam's talked to probably 20 people a day. I mean, I talked to a bunch. Wendell and Mike are doing a great job too. So it's been really something special, especially on a group chat too. It's been awesome.
You mentioned that you're talking to these guys a couple times a day. I know right now it's a little bit different, but I mean, shoot, we asked you during football season, and it was obviously much different than the summer. What is it like for you on a typical day, or at least, the last couple weeks when it comes to recruiting? Because obviously you're juggling a bunch of things. You're, off-season training, you're finishing up with school, of course. But at the same time, too, it sounds like this is like a part-time job for you, right? I mean, you do what you got to do, football standpoint, school-wise, and this is your side gig. This is your, this would be like someone investing in a company in a couple of years, and they're trying to build it all up. This is what they're doing as a side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I mean, obviously, got to do the football stuff, so we work out 2 times a day with our team, and we throw. So all that stuff is getting taken care of. But yeah, like you said, this is something that's really important to me. It's really important to the class and the school. I mean, you have to recruit the right type of kids, and you have to recruit them at the right time. But yeah, I mean, I've been getting into more of the video game stuff. So I mean, I don't know if anybody saw, but me and Blake were playing Fortnite the other night. So shout out Blake, we got our first dub, first game we played. So it's just the relationships that you build with those guys, and it's just easy when you can do stuff like that. Especially when obviously I'm from Massachusetts and Blake's from South Carolina, so you can just easily just hop on a game of Fortnite or something like that, get on a FaceTime call with those guys, just really connect and just get to know them more than just like a football level. Because I feel like that's what makes the most sense for all of us.
You mentioned Massachusetts, and people are going to downplay this, but Dante Reno, what a trooper to come on today. It's not an easy day. Everyone thinks it's all sunshine and rainbows because Harvard committed. He's a Brady guy. It's tough on all of us today. So Dante, I appreciate you battling through it, because I know emotionally it is a tough day for you there. So we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, Tom Brady. It's all right. We'll get through it.
Dante, I did have one question before you go, man. I know we
Yes.
talked last week about, the importance of recruiting guys, and I guess now today you're kind of seeing some fruits of your labor, if you will. It's starting to see some results. I guess, how does that feel?
Yeah, it feels great. I mean, obviously Cam, when he committed, that was huge. And then Wendell and Mike, I mean, they've been great since day one. They've been quiet for a little bit, but obviously when they announced it was huge. And the momentum that we have in the 24 class right now, I'd say is great. Everybody we've talked to, and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure people will be like, oh, like I can't believe South Carolina's actually talking to that kid, or I can't believe they got the number one tackle in the country. But it's true. Like the momentum that we have right now is something special. And I think you can only get it at certain parts of the year. It's once people commit and stuff like that. So we're on that train right now. And we'll try and keep it going.
Dante, what's the next couple weeks looking like for you in
Yeah.
terms of
So I think,
training and everything else in between?
yeah. So it's a dead period right now. So we can't go visit South Carolina or go to practice or anything like that. So we'll go back down there in March. And I think the four of us are going to try and meet up there and go to a practice and stuff like that. But right now we're training. We have team lift 6:45 in the morning, and then I usually either work out at Yale or I throw my quarterback coach in the afternoon. So it's a packed schedule with school and stuff like that. But you gotta love what you do, and it's been great for me. So it's been awesome off season so far.
I know we've talked about it, but for the people that haven't heard, because like you said, your father, of course, head coach at Yale, and you've been able to get to know guys over there. One of those guys I'm sure you've been able to build relationships with is one of the newest offensive linemen through the transfer portal, Nick Gargiulo. Big boy, captain of the team last year, which says a lot when you're the captain of Yale and they only have one captain each year. What
Yep.
can you tell Gamecock fans what they can expect? Because from all the conversations I've had with South Carolina coaches or people that are close to the program as well, they expect this guy to come in there, compete for the starting center spot. I know he's played other positions on the offensive line during his time over at Yale, but what can you tell us about Gargiulo?
Yeah, like you say, he's a captain of Team 149, which is the team last year. And they only have one captain every year. And him being a captain, him being from Northeast part of the country, New Jersey. So he's a really tough player. He's really smart. He called all the protections for the line last year. He's just a really good person. He fits in well with all the players. Him and the Florida transfer, they're like best buddies. So when I was down there hanging out with them, we were all watching the Jaguars game and stuff like that. But no, Nick's just a really good person. He's going to be a great fit for Coach Beamer, and everything that they want to do, leadership wise, and both on and off the field. So he's a really good dude. He's gonna do great things, and I hope he gets a chance to play. But he knows he has to go out there and earn it. So that's the biggest thing. He's gonna be fun to watch.
Last question, because I'm trying to squeeze this in before you have to get off.
No
This will be
worries.
the last one. Dal Loggins. He's been there for a short period of time. And as I've said many times before, at the end of the day, he will ultimately be judged for what he does as a play caller. I think we all understand that. But as we know with college football, there's more that goes into it than just that. And the time period in the offseason, and especially since he arrived back in December, it seems like he has done practically everything right in Columbia. Can you kind of give us a look behind the scenes in terms of some of the conversations that you guys have had and just the immediate impact he's had? Because you think about recruiting, obviously you talk about a guy like Nicholas Harbor and some of the offensive players. If you guys aren't connecting with the offensive coordinator, if you guys aren't seeing the same way that he's seeing the vision, I'm sure it'd be real easy to say no, but that's not the case here.
Yeah, Dow's a great person, first of all. And when Coach Beamer hired him, I was actually the first person to get in contact with him. We texted and stuff like that, and we got on the phone. And his biggest thing was relationships. I mean, he was in the NFL, in the league for I think it was 17 years. And he coached
Mm.
guys like Connor Shaw, Johnny Manziel. He coached Tony Romo. So he coached all those guys, but they're all different. And the way that he sees quarterbacks just fitting the offense to what they have, it's not really fitting the offense to what the offensive coordinator wants to do. So like the personnel and stuff like that. I think it's gonna be really special what he's gonna do. He's a really smart guy. I mean, the first meeting we had, we just talked ball the whole time. I think that was really beneficial for me to see, and especially for obviously my dad to see, and stuff like that. But it's gonna be really cool what they're gonna do offensively. I obviously don't want to give too much away and stuff like that, but it's gonna be really cool. Spencer's gonna be he's gonna be just fine. I mean, I think that's the big reason to why he stayed. Is obviously Dow and his NFL background and stuff like that, and obviously getting Juice back too. So Dow's going to do a great job. He's a great person. He's been great with me since day one. So I can't wait to play for him and everything he wants to do.
Well, Dante, stay warm. I'm going to be getting back up into Massachusetts on Friday, right in time for that lovely cold front that's going to be bringing negative degrees with the wind chill and all that. So
Yeah,
bundle up,
great.
buddy. I'll be battling it there with you. But we appreciate you hopping on today.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Bye, Dante.
Bye.
All right, Dante Reno, quarterback, class of 2024 commit. A lot of great stuff there. And again, obviously the big story today, Nicholas Harbor committing, and not to be forgotten, okay? Elijah Caldwell as well. Very talented wide receiver. The numbers that he's put up over the last 2 seasons, my goodness. My goodness. And he's coming from the Rock Hill area too. It's not like he was just playing for, TikTok Tech. I mean, he's coming in high level of football, high level of production, and it's another local kid that Shane Beamer made sure that they didn't lose out on the state of South Carolina. So I bring that up because, again, there's no question. There is no question that the commitment of Nicholas Harbor, that's going to steal the headlines. No question about it. And there's a lot of other things, too, that Dante Reno brought up that we can get into in a little bit, intern Joe. But I want to bring up Caldwell as well. I want to pull up some of these numbers here because, like I said, what Caldwell has done, especially over the last 2 years, it's very, very impressive. But last season alone, too. These are his numbers at Northwestern High School, okay? Last year, 1,300 yards receiving, 77 receptions, 20 touchdowns. The year before that, 15 touchdowns. So, again, I understand that, especially when you look at South Carolina's class right now, all the 4 stars, 5-star now, of course, with Nicholas Harbor, over that 50% mark when you talk about blue chip players, which, again, has not happened since 2014 with South Carolina. But as we've seen, especially over this last year, and I'm not saying that Caldwell has to go out there and do exactly what Nick Eamon-Worry did, but you think of guys like Eamon-Worry, you think about guys like DQ Smith, you think about some of these players who maybe were overlooked a little bit coming out of high school. DQ Smith right there, 3-star, right? And look what both those guys did this year. So I say that because, again, that's not saying that Caldwell has to go out there and be a freshman All-American or, SEC this, that. No. What I'm saying is if this guy is able to come in here and make any type of impact, especially quickly, but if he's able to make any type of impact where it goes to show, hey, it's not about the fact that he was a 3-star. It's about the fact that Shane Beamer is making damn sure that if there's good talent, regardless of their stars, right? 5, 4, 3. And I mean, shoot, I guarantee you, I'm not looking in the comment section right now, but it seems like anytime we talk about 3 stars, obviously we're talking about in-state talent here, but anytime you talk about 3 stars, how many times do people say, oh, DJ Swearinger, oh, Connor Shaw? Beamer understands that. Beamer was here during that. So again, I say all that because I think Caldwell, again, it's going to get overlooked today. Very, very, very good pickup for South Carolina. No question about it.
Absolutely. And Shane, you heard him in his presser today. He said Elijah Caldwell is just scratching the surface on how good he can be. And I think if you look at his high school numbers, it proves that, he is a very underrated recruit. And I think he can really get in. He can get in the program and really do some damage once he adjusts to the playbook and everything. And I like the comment about the Brian Edwards comparison because, I think that's probably the ceiling for Elijah Caldwell. And it's big, too, coming out of Rock Hill. We know plenty of athletes that came out of Rock Hill that have played at this fine university that have turned into something. So I think, there's so much upside with Elijah Caldwell. It was hard not to take him, And Mike, there wasn't as much drama behind his commitment and everything because he committed a little earlier than Nick did. And obviously Nick is the higher ranked recruit, but still so important for the Gamecocks to get him as well and just more firepower out on the edge. Big day for Spencer Rattler, at least in the quarterback room in terms of weapons moving forward. I think Caldwell's a big piece, has a very high ceiling, and will be able to do some damage coming up here forward.
I do want to double check on something because I'm reading you guys in the comment section, but it appears that South Carolina has had some more news today. One that kind of went under the radar because it's being posted by the Gamecocks official Instagram account. Now, again, I'll look into it a little bit more so we get a full confirmation, but it appears that South Carolina has landed D'Angelo Gibbs, a transfer from Tennessee. Now, Gibbs is a receiver, 6'1", 200 pounds. He was a former four-star. And he entered the portal with Tennessee back in May of 2022, right before the start of the season. So I'm reading all this because, again, this is the first I'm seeing it. And I just want to make sure that what I'm saying is accurate before we put it out there. But it appears, based off of, or at least according to South Carolina's official Instagram account, and I'm sure they've posted it on the Twitter page, their Twitter page as well. All right, nothing there yet. If we get any confirmation, and I'm going to continue to check with the guys I work with, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell. Wes is probably driving on back from DC. Big shout out to Wes. He might be listening to this on his way back. Did an outstanding job of being up there today at Harbors High School to cover that. If you haven't heard the interviews and everything that took place that Wes was able to gather, outstanding stuff, really good intel. Definitely check it out on Gamecock Central's YouTube page. Again, if you're just joining us, of course, the big news today, Nicholas Harbor committing to South Carolina, the highest rated commit so far in the Shane Beamer era, and also Elijah Caldwell, wide receiver from the Rock Hill area. But it appears that South Carolina has landed D'Angelo Gibbs, transfer wide receiver, last played with Tennessee. And it looks like South Carolina has just posted what they posted on Instagram on their Twitter account. So I want to double check that. See if we can get any more information about it. Because, again, this is one of those that could have just kind of flown out of under the radar. South Carolina has posted on Twitter now. It looks like it is 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 tweets in a row, 6, and it says, welcome newcomers. So that includes the transfers. That includes Nick Gargiulo, who we just talked about with Dante Reno from Yale. That includes Eddie Lewis. That includes high school commits like Babalade, Zachary Sandy, obviously Nicholas Harbor. But as I also read through this, it appears that they have landed D'Angelo Gibbs as well. Now, one more thing I do want to make note of for people that aren't familiar with D'Angelo Gibbs. He started his career off at Georgia. Again, former 5-star commit. Okay, former 5-star commit. Entered the portal back in May. So he was not with Tennessee this fall. I believe he has 1 year of eligibility remaining. I will double check on that because, again, this is news to me. So we're all learning about this together. He actually committed way back to Georgia. I believe it was in 2017. But he was not listed. Did not play in any games. He also did not play in any games for Tennessee during the 2021 season. So perhaps he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. I'll have to go back and double check. 2017 feels like it was years ago. So probably just 1 more year of eligibility intern. Joe, I don't know if are you seeing anything?
The latest on Gibbs, no, other than what you've already brought up. So yeah, I think I've looked at a little bit of his tape. I think he can be an impact guy, like another one of those guys. Like I'm blanking on the guy from Memphis' his name, but another one of those
Eddie
guys.
Eddie
Lewis, yeah. Like a player like Eddie Lewis, you go get him from the transfer portal that has a really high ceiling and could explode, or could get beat out for a job in camp. I think you might as well take a chance on a guy like that. And same deal with Gibbs. And playing at Tennessee is big. To get him out of the portal is huge. So big ad if
I
everything's true.
I don't know if it's my Boston accent because, guys, look, you're gonna
Yale.
have to bear with me. I've been up north the last couple of months now, so the Boston accent, Yale, like, is it coming across as like a Boston accent?
Yale.
Yale,
Yale.
Yale, Yale.
Yeah.
Well, another reason why I didn't get into Yale, but the Boston accent on it. Yeah, Gibbs is part of this class, and it's great. Big Red asks, shout out to Big Red, loyal Yale, as Jeffrey says, Yale. Yale. Is Harbor as ready to start at Clown? Well, the interesting thing about Harbor is, and from listening to Beamer today, because going back over the last couple of weeks, intern Joe, we talked about this on the program.
Yep.
There was a lot of conversations as to whether or not he'd be playing on the offensive side of tight end or if he'd be playing on the edge. And it seemed like the last couple of weeks, it's been leaning more to the fact that he wants to be on the offensive side. Now, instantly you think of, okay, tight end edge. But as Beamer said today, it looks like he also could be in the mix for playing receiver. Now, I'll say this. We've seen over, I'd say the last decade, really. You can go back to when Gronk was playing. And I use Gronk as kind of that mark, the beginning of Gronk's career. That's not saying there wasn't guys like Tony Gonzalez or Antonio Gates. But what I'm trying to get at is the position itself has really evolved, right? You think of Travis Kelce. Yeah, Travis Kelce is listed as a tight end. But, I mean, he's used more as a receiver. I mean, he's second all time in a lot of these receiving categories when you're talking about playoffs. So I'm using that because, with Harbor, because of his skill set, because of how fast he is, and that's not saying that he doesn't have the ability to block if needed to, but I feel like they'll use him more. If they list him as a tight end, I feel like they'll use him more as a receiver, if that makes sense. You'll see him more detached from the line of scrimmage. I also don't rule out the possibility of seeing him play a little defense. Again, we'll have to wait and see how things play out for South Carolina. We know that going into this season, and depending on how certain things play out, edge is a position that they're going to be a little, I don't want to say weak at, but they're not going to have proven depth. That's the phrase I always like using here, right? Proven depth. Even if Jordan Strong, which it appears to be that he is on track to return and that the NCAA will grant that waiver, as I've said before, going into last season, Jordan Strong, I had him as the guy that I thought was going to finish first in sacks. A year later, it's not that I don't believe in him, but he's coming back from an ACL injury. And as we've seen over the last couple of years, it's not from a physical standpoint that I'm concerned about with him. It's more that mental standpoint. That's not calling him mentally weak or anything, but just those lower body injuries, you're thinking a lot. If he can overcome that, man, what a get. What a get South Carolina will be able to have in terms of filling those voids. So I bring that up because I don't rule out the possibility of Harbor playing defense in some capacity, but it appears, based on the conversations today that we heard from Beamer, that Harbor will be playing on the offensive side. And we also know this too. He's not going to be throwing on all this weight. I mean, he's going to be doing track and field. We heard from the legend himself, Curtis Fry.
The GOAT.
I mean, the impact he had. Again, Beamer, Sterling Lucas, Jody Wright, Taylor Edwards, just go down the list, the impact this coaching staff has had. And obviously, I mean, shoot, Jessica Jackson and the entire recruiting department, outstanding. But it should not be overlooked, the impact that Curtis Fry had. He's coached 28 Olympians. Of that 28, 14 have won medals at the Olympic Games. So I bring all that up because with Harbor, we know he wants to stay probably somewhere around that weight. He'll probably gain a little bit more weight in terms of muscle, but it's not like one of these things where it's like, all right, if he's an edge, and granted, you have edges that, aren't the biggest guys in the world, but obviously got to have a little bit of size to you. I wouldn't expect him to come in here and throw on 20 pounds. It's just not going to happen because it just doesn't feel that's the direction that he wants to go because, again, it's not just about football for him.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think with a guy with that kind of size and speed, you can't not get him the football, right? It would be dumb not to get him the football. And Beamer said that today, he's like, it would be silly if we were to have him with his hand in the ground and blocking 50% of the time like a tight end does. So I think, I don't even want to compare him to Jaheim Bell because he's going to get the ball a lot more than that. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what exactly they do with him. And I'm sure Dowell's going to have a lot of fun putting a guy like that in offense. Like personally, Mike, I would have so much fun just drawing up play after play, around a guy like that, that's that fast and that big. And, that's why he's as highly rated as a recruit as he is. And, I think that was kind of the attitude. You're right, Mike, in the building, that he was going to play more offense simply because his speed and his, the threat to opposing defenses is just too much versus him playing on the defensive side of the ball. I think there's a chance you get, he's a dynamic playmaker. You get him the ball in space and he's gone. Arguably one of the best sprinters in the country too. And like you said, shout out Coach Fry, because this kid quite possibly is going to be an Olympian, and that's on the horizon too. And, he's not going to have to gain any weight. So he probably won't be playing tight end or blocking as much as he normally would at tight end. So I think it's huge. And like I said, the baseline here is you want to get a guy of that caliber, the football. It's plain and simple. Like, you need to get a guy like that with that kind of speed, the football, because he's going to do really, really good things with it. And when you have a quarterback that can make throws like Spencer can, and, even Doty or next guy's up, Dante, whoever, you got to get that guy the football, because he's going to make plays out in space and make guys miss, because he's a dynamic playmaker and can really do it all. And now if you were to have room for him on defense, sure, fine. But you also don't want to exhaust him. But one thing that Fry brought up that I thought was really, really interesting is that Nicholas's track background is leading to better stamina for him. Like, he is in shape already for football. He's already in football shape, and he has been running things. Like, his workouts that he is doing now are, put him in better shape than some of the guys they have already on the track team and in the football facility are already. So, his conditioning is not going to be an issue whatsoever for either.
And intern Joe, I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought it was very interesting when Fry mentioned that, just tracking how many yards he's run this year in comparison to last year, including obviously football. So I say all that because you're talking about two sports, and I think what gets overlooked sometimes is the fact that at the end of the day, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the greatest athlete in the world. I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter. At some point, you got to realize, like, hey, this is a human. This is a human. Like, everyone has limits, and you need to be able to protect that. So I say that because Fry mentioning all that, Fry bring up the fact that he's able to track how much he's going to be running in football and how much he can push him from a practice standpoint for track. It's absolutely outstanding. And one thing, too, that I thought was interesting that Fry brought up is how during this recruiting process, because you got to think about it, it works hand in hand for football and track. Fry has to make promises or say certain things to a recruit. Obviously, in this case, it's Harbor. And he said in the past that it wasn't as simple as just being able to pick up the phone and talk to the head football coach. Sometimes you'd have to talk to a positional coach. Sometimes you'd have to talk to a secretary. And then eventually you would talk to the head coach. He said that with this, he was able to make promises to Harbor. He was able to say certain things to Harbor, and he was able to pick up the phone and talk directly to Shane Beamer. Again, that might not seem like a big deal, but when you think about it, with not just track and football, baseball and football, just two-sport athletes in general, you need to have both coaches be on the same page. And with this, they were on the same page, and it's just absolutely outstanding. One thing I do want to mention, we're gonna hit a quick ad read here. Chris Clark, our colleague, he's looking into the D'Angelo Gibbs situation. Not sure if it's a scholarship situation or not. So if we're able to gather more information, we will provide that for you. But it appears, according to Gamecock Central, Gamecock Football, you can tell it's been a long day, Gamecock Football's official Twitter account, that D'Angelo Gibbs, formerly of Georgia, formerly of Tennessee, former 4-star wide receiver, has committed to South Carolina. With that being said, intern Joe, let's hit a quick ad read.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first advertiser, or the title sponsor tonight, is Clint Hammond at the Rocket Mortgage Network, the Movement Mortgage Network. Get your mortgage with our guy Clint. He's the best at what he does. He has helped out our good friend Perry Orth with his mortgage and has helped him greatly. His phone, you can reach him at 803-576-4450. Once again, that number is 803-576-4450. And Mike's got your next one for tax ID.
Yeah, tax season, it is right here. I mean, look, intern Joe, you always got to be ready for tax season and, start adding everything up and you start dealing with all these numbers. Well, look, guys over at Liberty Tax, they're going to be able to help you overcome tax anxiety. Give them a call at 803-462-5576. Intern Joe, he's growing up, and before you know it, he's going to be just regular Joe, and he's going to need to be more professional. He's going to have to take care of all this big money that he's going to be making. Joe, give them a call. Liberty Tax, they'll be able to get you right. I want to continue some of these conversations that we were having a little bit earlier, intern Joe. One thing I brought up was the RPM. I hope we can have the video played. I know I didn't talk to you about this, but I want to see if we can get, I actually have it on my end. I can actually play some of it and we'll see if it works. But one thing I thought was interesting, because look, when we have the RPM, the recruiting prediction machine, and I think a lot of people were paying attention to it over the last couple days, really, and they see those numbers go up and down, right? The percentage and how it fluctuates. As I mentioned at the beginning of the week, the best way to describe it, just to dumb it down, okay? It's kind of like a forecast when you're getting ready for rain. As you get closer to that exact date and that exact time, it's going to be more accurate, and you'll see those percentages fluctuate. Now, obviously, last night, I'd say probably about 24 hours ago, around this time, it looked like South Carolina was running away with it. Okay, it was around 40%. I think it was something like that. Then, at some point this morning, Oregon was around 40%. So I just want to throw this out. Now, granted, I don't work with the RPM. I don't work with the recruiting prediction machines, all that kind of stuff. The reason why that stuff went up and down, Shane Beamer gave us a little look into it this afternoon, talking about it. He received an audio message. And that audio message was saying, like, hey, coach, again, I don't know the exact, but based on what Shane said, that things were heading in the opposite direction for South Carolina. So I don't know what took place other than what Shane Beamer said to us. And, I think Gamecock Ryan, he said Oregon got as high as 66%. I don't know what took place between 2:57 a.m. and I'd say around noon. Because according to Shane Beamer, it was around that noon time. And I'm talking all Eastern time here. I know we're dealing with a West Coast team. We're talking Eastern time here. I don't know what transpired between that other than the conversations that Shane expressed during his press conference when I asked him that question, which was Sterling Lucas, Jody Wright, they were in constant communication with Harbor's camp, reaching out to his parents, reaching out to his coach, reaching out to Harbor. So I bring that up because, again, based on what Beamer said and based on the conversations I've had with people that are close to the program, what Beamer said at his press conference, it really was the God's honest truth based on the things that I've been told from people in the know, that it was just a simple reharping. Hey, look, you come to South Carolina, you know what you're going to be getting yourself into. You know the opportunities that could be out there from an NIL standpoint, right? Because of who you are from an elite athlete standpoint. And you're going to be around people that, you want to be around. Harbor really liked his visits here at South Carolina. He really likes the relationships that he's built with people at USC, and he's going to continue to build. The guys that are in his recruiting class, the guys like Dante Reno and some of the people that he's been able to meet in the class of 2024. I think it is so easy, intern Joe. It is so freaking easy, and this is one of the stories that'll be coming out on Gamecock Central shortly that I did today. It is so freaking easy to instantly assume when there is a 5-star, especially outside of the South Carolina area, and he commits to a school like USC. And I say to a school like USC because let's just call it for what it is. They're not in the same class as an Alabama, as a Georgia, as an Ohio State right now. Okay. That is what you're striving to be. Okay. Yep. So when you do things like this, naturally, people are just going to assume that they must have thrown a huge bag of money at you. That's not the case. That's not the case. Now, I'd be naive to say that there might not have been NIL opportunities for Harbor, okay? I'd be naive to say that, but that wasn't the deciding factor. That was because if that was the case, some of the money that Phil Knight worth almost what $49 billion, that would have been easy. It would have been real easy. So again, the RPM, to give people an indication, okay? It isn't, I mean, you're having conversations. Again, I'm not dealing with it. I'm not involved with it. But the reporters, whether it be South Carolina, whether it be, the guys across On3, they're having conversations with their sources. Some of those sources, they can be on the coaching staff. Some of those sources are close to the program. Some of those sources could be a high school coach of that player. Some of those sources could be the family itself. I bring that up because it is really just the latest on the information at all, programmed into an algorithm as well based on trends and stuff. And obviously On3 hasn't been around that long. So it will only get more accurate over time. But that's how all that stuff is figured out. It's not just, Johnny Bones in his parents' basement saying, oh, you know what? I think South Carolina is going to go there. I mean, I feel like that's good. No, there's a lot of factors. And when you're being told things, from as a reporter, you're only as good as your source. You're only as good as your sources. So that is how the RPM kind of worked today. To give people, not to give people a popsicle headache, but to give people kind of an idea of how that all went up and down, why it was changing, why it was leaning so much towards Oregon at one point. It's a roller coaster. But you know what, though, intern Joe? When you're in a position like South Carolina was today, and your heart's beating a little bit more than it usually does as a fan, that is a good thing. That means your program is starting to get to a point where you're having big boy recruiting battles. That's what today was. It was a big boy recruiting battle. And in the end, what South Carolina was selling to Harbor and his family, it prevailed. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, Mike, and you're right. All big boy recruiting battles include NIL.
This is funny.
Oh, yeah, that's what – yeah, I brought that up. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, shout out Boomer, the newest addition to the Harbor family. But yeah, no, you bring up the big boy recruiting battle, and that's what Shane's talked about. That's what Wes, I believe Wes was talking about. He was the first Gamecock Central person to bring it up, so credit Wes. All big boy recruiting battles nowadays involve NIL. And when you're playing against the stakes that are Phil Knight and Nike, Phil Knight's worth 42 point some odd billion dollars.
Closer to 49, intern Joe. Don't sell them short,
47,
man.
48, whatever it is. Billions on billions of dollars. It's going to be hard to compete. But Beamer talked about it today. He had a really good quote that, NIL was never really brought up with this kid. And, when he said that, it kind of squashed all of the late night thing and all the rumors with Nick's marketing guy and Phil Knight talking. And I mean, personally, if Phil Knight was trying to get me to come to his school, golly, would it be hard to say no? Mm-hmm. But that shows you what Coach Beamer and Gamecock football is brewing on, right? Nick talked about how the family aspect and Beamer talked about it at length today. And the dog comment proves that, Nick is coming here to be a part of a family. Dollar signs don't mean anything. It is to be a part of the family. And I think, on one end, it could have, drawn Nick away a little bit too, that, they only see him as a dollar sign. That could quite possibly be one of the issues. And so I think, being a family is one of the biggest things, that Beamer is selling here. And I do want to shout out one of my guys, Q. He's related to Jordan Birch, and he had a really good take on his podcast, the Welcome Home podcast, I believe it is. He had a really interesting take on what it's like to go through the family aspect of things when your son, cousin, whatever is going out to Oregon, because it's Birch went to Oregon and Nick was getting recruited by Oregon. So he provided a really good perspective on that and how hard it was for the family to see Jordan go out west. And, it was really good perspective because, it's really, really hard on the family. And I think with Beamer, where I'm going with this is Beamer selling it to be the family aspect, and for Pup Howard and Big Tree, really getting up, on Nick about, this is a family here and this is what we do here. And the dog thing, it all ties together because, being close to home too, it's another big thing. And I think South Carolina was the family aspect, right, Mike? They weren't the NIL, they weren't Nike. And I think that played a big portion of Nick's decision. It's like, these guys don't want me because, I'm a Nike athlete, or these guys don't want me. They don't see me as a dollar sign. They see me as part of the family. I think that's ultimately what this recruitment came down to. So shout out to Beamer, and shout out to Beamer's dog, Boomer, man. Boomer getting it done. Love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. Shout out Boomer. I hope Shane's giving him plenty of treats tonight, man. He deserved it.
And I do want to say this, because for those that don't know what the heck Intern Joe's talking about, Beamer mentioned during his press conference today that he felt like Harbor's mother fell in love with the family dog. And, he made a joke. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to explain to my kids, but, it's kind of part of the deal that I have to give the dog to Harbor's mother. Of course, that's not true. I can't believe I have to say that, but there's actually been a lot of people actually asking if that's true. I do want to say this, Scott, that Boston side of me probably came out a little bit earlier when I was busting your chops, but you've had some good comments here today, so we appreciate that. Intern Joe, I know you got to get going in a little bit. I'll keep it rolling if you can't stay on as long.
I just got to go put some groceries in the freezer, man. I'll be on. We got all night, Mike. We got all night. There's some.
Yeah, don't tell my girlfriend that.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring this up though. When you look at where South Carolina is as of right now, and again, I mean, being able to land Nick Harbor, I mean, it goes without saying. It goes without saying. But, and I had this in some of the stories that we had on Gamecock Central, and I'm going to pull it up from when I was talking with him. I was talking with Marcus Lattimore earlier today, and Marcus sent me this, talking about the impact of getting Nicholas Harbor. And he said, quote, elite athletes from all across the country will start to take notice because of his commitment. Harbor will recruit and create a domino effect. His testimony is powerful, just like Elshon Jeffrey and Stephon Gilmore's was to my decision. That's what I hope people understand more than anything, is that, again, yes, Nicholas Harbor, we expect him to come out here. We expect him to be a phenomenal athlete, both on the football field, both on the track. But it doesn't end right there. Like, this isn't that's not how the story just ends. It's not, okay, he comes here and then he has a great career. That's phenomenal. That's part of it. That's one of the chapters. And this isn't a slight at Nick, but I don't think that's the biggest part of it. I don't think that's the biggest part of it. I think what the biggest part of it is that Harbor has committed to a program that is still trying to get to that point where they are competing for divisional titles. And then obviously you keep growing from there. So again, South Carolina has took steps forward, especially in the last 2 years. You think back to where they were at the end of the 2020 season, had no head coach, finished the year at 2-8. You think back to the 2019 season, you combine those 2 years, 6 wins combined in 19 and 2020. So I bring all these things up because, again, it wasn't that long ago that South Carolina, I don't want to say they were a laughing stock, but it was just an absolute train wreck. So the fact that Beamer has come in here in 2 years and people can mention numbers like, oh, this is how many wins Muschamp had and this and that. I get it. At the end of the day, that is how you will be judged. Your wins and losses on Saturdays. I totally understand that. But it's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same 15-11 like it was after 2 years under Muschamp. It's not. South Carolina, again, like I mentioned, some of these numbers with recruits and blue chip players and just, it's just different. It's just different. It doesn't always have to be tangibles. It can be the intangibles sometimes, the things that you don't see, that you can't touch. And I feel like anyone that has been in Columbia over the last 2-3 years in particular, but even if you're on the outside, and you're paying attention to this, you can tell, you can sense there's just something different right now. There's something different. And I would have said that even if Harbor didn't commit to South Carolina today. But with his commitment, going back to what Marcus said, it's a testimony. It is huge. It is a statement. Even what Dante was saying, some of the conversations he's been having with other prospects that USC is currently looking at, it sends a message to the rest of the country that South Carolina, that Shane Beamer, that this coaching staff, that this program, they're changing things. They really are. Now it comes down to being able to get the production on the field, to being able to translate that into wins. Because look, this is all great. This is all great. You can have all the ingredients in the world to make this phenomenal cake. But at the end of the day, it's up to the cook to be able to make that cake taste good. Because if it tastes like crap, people can read BS. People can read BS. People can read when things aren't as great as they've been. Okay? I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I don't think this is what Robert's saying, and I'll let you talk, intern Joe, because I know I'm rambling at this point. But it's not the difference between Harbor committing to South Carolina and GG Jackson is in basketball. Yes, one player can change things, but what South Carolina is going through right now, you need to have more talent on the court. As I've said before, and this isn't a slight against the team, it's just calling it for what it is. It's GG Jackson, it's Michi, and then it's a full of, SoCon talent. That's just the reality of it, okay? If that's mean, get used to it, okay? I'm coming back from Boston. We're going to just call it for how it is. That's just the reality of it. The difference, though, is GG is going to leave after 1 year. Most likely. I mean, anything's possible, but very likely, I should say, is that he's going to leave after this season. Football, you have to stick around at least, 2 years. Now, again, obviously the transfer portal's out there and this and that, but the point being is you can build around it a little bit more, okay? Guys that want to go play with Harbor that might not be in this class, they might commit next year because they want to be part of that. GG Jackson, a kid that's in the class of 2024, he might not have that opportunity if Gigi's one and done. So again, I'm bringing that up though, intern Joe, because it's different. It's different. That's not downplaying the impact Gigi's commitment had on the program. It's just that when you look at where the basketball program is in comparison to football, it's tough to compare the two. Still a very big get. Still an important get, I think, in terms of sending a message of what Columbia can be. But with this for football, I don't think it's close. I don't think it's close.
No, not close to GG quite yet, right? If we do go about comparing them, and it is hard, really, because Lamont is in year 0 of the rebuild. My first, I guess, idea of who a GG Jackson would kind of be, and again, less players on the floor, it's harder to compare, but I mean, in terms of significance, it would kind of be a Pop Howard. But again, Gigi's going to be a one and done, so he's not going to stick around and be recruiting the whole time. But in terms of, I guess, importance, my mind, I guess, if you want to play that game, is Pop Howard. But yeah, like it does feel different around here. It really does. I came to school here at the start of the Muschamp era, and I saw somebody brought that up, and it's night and day difference. Ever since Shane got here, it's felt different, and now you're starting to see the fruits of the culture paying off, right? That's the biggest thing that this city and that this fan base has seen, is like a culture shift within the building, and it's paying off finally. And now that Nick, I talked about it earlier, Nick came because he wants to be a part of a family, and this is true testament to what this family can do. And I mean, just wait till they get on the field that next fall, Mike. I think they're going to really, really turn some heads. They're turning heads in recruiting, and with the Dowell hire, I think Dowell's got he's got a chance to prove himself, and I think it's really, really big. So it does feel different, and it feels different because it is, and the culture, and that shows you what changing the culture can do, right? It starts internally. Sometimes coaches go to a new school and they don't really change the culture. They kind of are there and they try to win football games first, and you can't really do that unless you have a culture. And the culture is the baseline, right? That's what you want to start to kind of build a long-lasting program and to kind of get it going. And that's what Shane realized from the jump. is if you change the culture and be yourself, people will take notice, and you can build on top of it and build.
Well,
and
he's
build.
had the blueprint. He's had the blueprint, and
Exactly. And
it's one of those things
his
that we
father and
say.
Spurrier both, right?
It's one of those things that we say, but think about it, okay? Think about it. I mean, it's not the same, but I mean, we're talking about from personal experiences. I mean, I go from down here to up in Boston. I'm back here. There's certain things that I've been able to gain from being in a different place. Okay. And it's not like I was gone for like years, but what I'm trying to get at is you understand what things need to look like in order to be successful in whatever business world you're in. Doesn't have to be just football, doesn't have to be media, it could be anything, right? You understand when success is there. Gamecock Central, and that's what I'm talking about, it's a very successful business. You go places, you come back, you try to build on it. So I'm bringing that up, not the, apples to apples, but what I'm trying to get at is Beamer was here when it was successful. Beamer understands what that blueprint looks like. He goes somewhere else, okay? Hops around, gains knowledge, gains experiences, things that you're not going to be able to do unless you venture out. He does that. He comes back here. He's better off for it. He's a better coach because of it. But on top of it all, the foundation that he needed and is continuing to build at South Carolina, it all goes back to that blueprint. It all goes back to those things that he learned from Spurrier, that he learned during his time at South Carolina, knowing, okay, this is the margin of error in terms of being successful or not being successful at South Carolina. So again, some of this might sound like we're beating a dead horse, but it's those little things. It's those little things that really make a difference. And I feel like because he has that knowledge, those attention to details at a place like South Carolina, I think we're starting to see it pay off in a big way, especially today, Intern Joe.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. And another thing I wanted to bring up too before we get to Big Red's question, because I thought it was a really good one, and I'll answer it too first if you want me to. Another thing that I think about when we talk about the foundation, right? Like, yes, he was here during the Spurrier days, and yes, he got to see what works at South Carolina. And I mean, in terms of that, it's in-state recruiting, and boy, is he taken off on that. We've seen that. But Harbor's not in-state, so we'll go. But I mean, the thing that I think of in terms of like culture and foundation is learning from his father, right? Like Frank Beamer was beloved by everybody that ever interacted with him. He was such a good coach and such a beloved coach that I think that's where he kind of gets the genuity of him, right? Like, him being himself, he gets that a lot from his father because, that's all Frank was at Virginia Tech, was himself, right? And he saw that, Shane saw firsthand how that works and how that affects people because, I mean, Frank Beamer will live on forever in Virginia Tech lore. Mm-hmm. And so I think, Shane picked up on that when he was there as a kid and just being yourself and how far that goes, being your own true, genuine self, how far that goes and how that impacts people. I think that's huge. And to answer Big Red's question, man, I think absolutely, like in terms of energy and everything and just kind of getting the startup for a program that had been dormant for, a number of years. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I mean, I wasn't really around for Dabo's early years to really kind of see what was going on with him and kind of see real close. But I mean, from the national standpoint, and from what I was seeing from Notre Dame, absolutely. Dabo was a very young, energetic coach who was really good at recruiting at a very, early age. So, I mean, I that's what I think, about. I mean, it's hard, and I hate comparing South Carolina to Clemson, but yeah, I think Dabo's a good guy to look at in terms of like the early stages of it, Mike. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the reason why some Gamecock fans don't like the comparison Dabo to Beamer is because the fact it is your rival school, okay? It's your in-state rival school. I get it, okay? I do think there are a lot of similarities, though, between the two. Yeah. And whether you agree with what I'm about to say next is, your prerogative. But I think the big thing with both of them is the fact that they are both authentic. Now, here's the thing. You might not feel like Dabo's authentic. You might think he's corny, cheesy, whatever the case may be. Okay. I don't know how I can assume what Gamecock fans think about him. Those aren't my words. But I think the thing with him is the way he is, because I've had conversations with people. I mean, I still have my relationships with a lot of people over at Clemson. from my time of covering them when I worked in TV here. And they say literally what you see in front of the camera when he's doing all that stuff, that's just how he is behind the scene. So the point being is, he's authentic. He's authentic to himself. And I think if there's anything that we can compare the two on is that the fact that Beamer is, authentic to himself. What you see is what you get. I don't think it's a bad comparison. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Again, the big thing is the fact that it's your rival school. I understand. Now, to take it another step, I wouldn't say that, like Beamer's like Dabo Jr. No, okay? He's doing his own thing. He's doing his own thing. I wouldn't say if I'm trying to compare someone, I wouldn't instantly think, oh, yeah, when I think of Shane Beamer, I'm thinking of Dabo. No, honestly, what I think of more than anything, when I think of anyone, people bring up Lincoln Riley. I truly, and I know it's just really easy to say this, I think of Frank Beamer. Frank Beamer was authentic. Frank Beamer, what you saw was what you got. The goofy videos of him dancing in the law, you didn't see it as much. Or maybe there's people that just, unless you were in that area, because obviously social media has changed things, maybe you didn't see it as much. That's who he is. He's a carbon cutout of his father. And that's not a bad thing at all, especially the success that Frank Beamer had at Virginia Tech. So I bring that up because, again, with what Shane is doing over here, and you want another comparison, always makes Clemson people's heads explode. Dabo Swinney was 15-11 through his first 2 years as head coach at Clemson. All right. So I bring those things up because, and that's a fun conversation. That's more of a fun debate. Comparing Beamer's first 2 years at South Carolina compared to Dabo's first 2 years. Just if you like, conversation. Just like if you like conversation. That'd be a fun one to do.
Yeah.
But, obviously Dabo has accomplished a lot at Clemson, regardless of the conference they play in, regardless of all that stuff. At the end of the day, Dabo has done an outstanding job at Clemson. Outstanding job. What Shane's trying to do right here, he's trying to put the program in position to say the same things. And we obviously know how difficult that is in the SEC. Okay, we understand that. We understand that it's not going to be an easy task. It's going to be even more difficult in the next couple of years once Oklahoma and Texas enter into the SEC. So we bring these things up just because, look, there's still a long ways to go before this program is at a level of what Clemson has been able to do over the last couple of years, or Georgia or Alabama, whatever the case may be. Insert this team here, insert team name here. But again, when you're talking about the foundation, it's really strong right now. It's really strong. And look, you got to get those wins, as we mentioned. But that foundation in turn, Joe, boy, is it looking strong right now. And I think a lot of that goes back to what the original question was. It's because Shane is being Shane. He's authentic. Again, Dabo is authentic to himself. You might not like it. And as we're seeing here with Shane Beamer, if you're not from this area, not saying that everyone feels this way, but there's a lot of people outside that don't like it, So that's what I would say about that.
Absolutely. I like Charlie's comment here because Shane brought it up too in his pressers. It says, Beamer's born in Charleston and this has been his dream job. Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing from him, right? We're seeing that, he is living out his dream. And that's kind of the energy that I'm getting from him, is that, like, this is a guy that is in his dream job and is doing everything he can to keep it and just having fun in it, right? So that's kind of what I'm getting. And it shows you too. You're right about Dabo. I will say that, like, he is being himself, although it's a little goofy and a little Disney-like. People don't necessarily like it, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, too, with Beamer, you saw what Coach Stoops said about him. So it can definitely rub people the wrong way if you don't necessarily get what he's trying to do and understand the kind of the background. And like Charlie's comment says, this is his dream job, plain and simple, and this is where he wants to be. This is what he wants to be doing, is bringing a program. And I think, Mike, we've talked about it over and over and over again. I think it starts with the culture, right? It really does. That's the foundation of everything that he's trying to build, everything that you need to build at an SEC program. And that's what Saban did when he, took over at Bama. And now I'm not quite comparing South Carolina to Bama quite yet, but I mean, I tell you what, like it's the bare necessities. You have to change the culture, and the only way you can do that is by being yourself. And Shane Beamer is doing that, and I think that's what should give fans hope and find some joy for sure. Like that line is so perfect because as the momentum builds, it's getting easier and easier to find some joy. And I mean, Mike, I guess the tipping point, if you will, is beating Clemson, landing a guy like Pup Howard, and then beating Clemson. Beating Clemson is the first step, if you will. I mean, you could even argue the Duke's Mayo Bowl too, as a positive note to kind of get things rolling. But I think this last year, the 2 wins that you had to finish the season, where nobody thought you had a chance in either of those 2 games, I think that's huge, right? I think that is huge, and that shows what changing the culture can do. And you also saw how many guys stuck around when the head coaching, change happened. What Beamer was selling to the guys that were already here, the athletes that stayed. I think that's huge. There were more guys than you would ever think that stuck around when there is a regime change. So culture. I mean, South Carolina fans have heard all about it, and they're going to keep hearing about it because it is what makes the difference here. And especially with, I don't want to say South Carolina is a smaller market school, but considering how the last couple of years have gone, we're not exactly Georgia in terms of like ESPN level, national level coverage. So I think it starts with that, and landing guys that like 5-star guys, and improving your recruiting class and making splashes like that, and having Nick Harbor commit to your team on ESPNU on National Signing Day. It doesn't really get any better than that. So it just keeps building and building and building, and the momentum just keeps going and going. And Mike, I mean, personally, I don't see an end in sight right now, unless, somehow this fall they decide to, get 4 or 5 wins, which I mean, with the roster that they have right now, it doesn't seem possible, but I don't know, man. I really don't see a momentum stopper in sight right now.
I want to hit on something. I do want to hit on something because happy, and good to have you in tonight. Happy. Saying that you feel sorry for the guys who left. They're missing out on being part of something big. I've been thinking a lot about this today because I don't think it's one thing that's really been brought up a lot. And maybe it's one of those things that I find very interesting. I don't know if anyone else does. So you have Nicholas Harbor, right? And it comes down essentially between South Carolina and Oregon. Well, what happened a couple months ago? We're not even a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago. You have Jordan Birch, a Columbia kid leaves South Carolina to go to Oregon. Now, there's obviously been reports out there. NIL played a big role in that as to why he left and why he went to Eugene. But I bring that up because how easy could it have been for Nicholas Harbor to look at that and say, you know what, man, he must be leaving there. Something must be wrong with South Carolina. And he just ends up going to Oregon. Wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. When guys like Birch, when guys like Marshawn Lloyd, when there were other players, when players were leaving South Carolina, it was really easy for a lot of people to start wondering what's going on at South Carolina. What's going on at South Carolina? Are there internal problems? Do people want to play for Shane Beamer? Do people want to play for certain positional coaches? What's the problem over there? And as I've said it, as some of my colleagues have said it, you have to look at all those cases case by case. Case by case. Because, again, you look at what happened today. A player had the opportunity to either go to Oregon or South Carolina. And a player had just left South Carolina, a former 5-star at that, a guy that grew up in the area right down the street. And he went out to Oregon. What does that say about what's going on at South Carolina? What's really going on at South Carolina? What that says is those 3 individuals I brought up, and obviously there were other players, Austin Stogner, and he explained when he left South Carolina that he just wanted to be closer to home, okay? Everything has to be viewed case by case. case by case. Now, if there's something that happens at South Carolina where it was just absolutely, obvious, right? That Shane Beamer does something, it's dumb, whatever the case may be. Yeah, it's easy to look at that. But that's not the case. That's not the case. I just think, again, and it's not to say, what Birch did is right or what's wrong. Players are going to do what they feel like is in the best interest for themselves. Okay? They're going to do what is in the best interest for themselves. And as intern Joe gets back, kind of just to let you know what we were talking about here, what I was trying to hit on is how easy it could have been for Harbor to look at Birch's situation, leaving South Carolina, goes to Oregon and say, man, something has to be wrong at South Carolina. Because there were a lot of people, I felt like, that were saying that or assuming that when guys were leaving, starters were leaving.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. You have to look at it case by case. Case by case. And I don't want to sit here playing this game, and I'm sure fans will do it. Who would you rather have, Harbor or Jordan Birch? Again, everything plays out the way that it's supposed to. Trust what Beamer's doing. Trust what this coaching staff is doing. When crap hits the fan, yeah, be frustrated. Call them out. It's part of it. It's part of it. They understand. I was talking to Beamer today, because we were talking and he was asking me about how, things were covering the Patriots and all that. And I was saying to him, I said, when things are going well, everyone's going to kiss your ass. Everyone's going to tell you how great you are, right? And as soon as things hit the fan, right, that's when everyone's going to get all pissed off, because we were talking about the Patriots with their offense this year. So I bring all that up because he understands it. And the SEC, I understand college football is the level below the NFL, but really the SEC is kind of like a farm system at this point for the NFL. He understands the pressure of being in this conference. He understands all of that. He understands that when things don't go well, if you sneeze the wrong way, there's going to be someone that's, not happy about it. That's the reality of it. It's okay to do, but that doesn't mean if a guy transfers out, it doesn't mean that, oh my goodness, what's going on at South Carolina? 3-player, oh my goodness. No, it's happening everywhere in the SEC. It's happening everywhere guys are transferring out. Case by case. It's a case by case deal at South Carolina. And as we saw today, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, intern Joe, they have brought in some very, very, very talented players. Not just Nicholas Harbor, not just Elijah Caldwell today. They've brought in some very talented players over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. And it was funny. I don't know if you saw the picture of Birch at the top of the student section and then Nick right in the middle of the Oregon basketball student section when Nick was on his visit. But yeah, I think Oregon was making a big play to that. I think they'd be stupid if they didn't play to, the Birch aspect of, yeah, he left, come to us. But, and don't get me wrong. Jordan Birch did a lot of good things for South Carolina football. I'm a big fan of his game. I really hope he does well. But I know Oregon was playing into that narrative for sure. You'd be stupid not to. But you're right, Mike. Case by case, my friend. Case by case. And two, Birch is doing what's best for him. And that's exactly what Nick Harbor is doing by going to South Carolina, right? It's no slight on any, school or whatever. These guys are doing what is best for themselves. So it's not like Jordan Birch said, hey, they mistreated me here and it was horrible and it was the worst place ever. No. Jordan Birch went to Oregon because he felt it was best for him. And that's exactly what Nick Harbor is doing today. That's all it really comes down to is what right, Mike? Case by case, it is literally what guys think, will be the best thing for them. And, I think the family aspect, like Nick wanted to be in a family aspect. He wanted to be a part of a family and be a part of the culture that Beamer is building because, yeah, Mike, it's freaking toxic, man. It is it's contagious. Sorry, not toxic. I messed up my words here. Don't get me wrong. But it's contagious, man. It's the same thing as like happiness is contagious. Yeah. You've covered this team, Mike, since the beginning of the Beamer era. You can feel it just coming off of them in pressers and even like post-game interviews, anything, man. You can get the sense of culture and you feel like you're a part of it covering the team and the fans feel like they're a part of it. I think it's huge. And you're right, case by case between Birch and Harbor. And I think, I wish Birch the best. I know a lot of South Carolina fans aren't going to like me for that comment, but I really do. I mean, Birch put in his time here. He did really well for the university.
Yep.
And even though his recruitment was a little shady and shadowy and came from that other guy, Birch did his thing last year.
The other guy, no respect for Will Muschamp.
Okay,
Come on. Will was a good person. He can at least get his name said.
Coach Muschamp, I apologize, but either way.
Patrick says, who would you rather have, Harbor or Bell? Well, I mean, and I know this is semantics here, but I do think you got to break it down. Would you rather have a guy that has more years of eligibility remain? I mean, you can. So with that being said, let's just say for 1 year, would you rather have Jaheim Bell going into this next year? Would you have Nicholas Harbor going into this next year? I like the potential for Nicholas Harbor. I think he brings a lot to the table. I do think if Florida State can find a way to utilize Jaheim, I think he's going to be talented. I know that there was a lot of people when he left USC, how quickly things changed, and I understand it. I understand the frustration, but how quickly things changed from going into the season of, oh my God, Jaheim Bell's going to be doing this and this, could be a first-round draft pick too. As soon as he was leaving, it was just like, oh, what a bum, and maybe bum was a little too strong of a word. I don't know if people said exactly that, but overrated, So I bring that up because I think Jaheim Bell is still a very, very talented player. We see and have seen at South Carolina when he was utilized and the ball was given to him, the production that he can have. I still think he can be a very, very talented NFL player. I do believe, though, when you look at Harbor, outside of everything that he can accomplish from a track and field standpoint, I do believe Harbor, between what he can do from a defensive standpoint, if asked, if called upon, that makes him, in my opinion, at least going into the situation, more valuable. But I also think that with his speed, if they utilize him, and he's going to be in a situation where they have a new offensive coordinator, and Dal Loggins isn't stupid. Someone's going to cut this soundbite if things don't go well offensively, like game 1, 2, or 3. But Dal Loggins isn't stupid. He knows what he's walking into. He knows what he's getting himself into at South Carolina because, look, the last guy that was here, and Marcus Satterfield, he called some great games at the end of the year. Give him his flowers, okay? He called some great games at the end of the year. The consistency wasn't there. But I bring all this up because he understands that there's a lot of people that are going to be looking at him, meaning Dal Loggins. They're going to be looking at Dal with a magnifying glass, and he's going to be thrown into that pressure. And they're going to be looking, meaning the outside, the media, the boosters, the fans, and they're going to be judging him not just on what he does as an offensive coordinator and as a play caller, but based on what happened before him. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, and I think he's going to find ways to get things rolling. Intern Joe, we'll wrap things up here. Yeah. I want to say one more thing, though, because it should not be.
Yeah, a couple things.
You have a couple things too.
I do have one more thing on Nick Harbor.
Intern Joe, you go. Intern Joe, you go.
Right. I'll get this and then I'll close. Give me a little, yeah. But the coolest thing I think personally about Nick Harbor is his potential to be an Olympian. Like, think about that, right? Like a guy who goes to the University of South Carolina could be competing in the Olympics next summer. Like, that is awesome. And think about, I mean, the branding, right? Like, the University of South Carolina is going to be on a national stage if he qualifies, and so far so good. Like, and I mean, what Coach Fry is going to do with him, he talked about, a little bit of his development coming up and maturing and getting off the starts. And we'll see coming up, I think Harbor's going to New York to compete against some of the pros. So we'll see there. But I think it's just so cool that he has the talent, number one, to compete in the Olympics, and number two, to be able to go do it. Like, I don't know, as growing up, in the North and everything, and just as an American, I've always loved the Olympics, and to see a guy like that who can, play SEC football, the highest level of college football there is, and then to go, compete with some of the best athletes in the world. I think that's so cool, and one of my favorite things about him, Mike. I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to get that out.
Maybe it's just me. I mean, the Olympics, it doesn't move the needle for me like it used to. And maybe it's just because we have the ability to see everything so quickly. And I do think that, we talk about it with Bo Jackson. Would Bo Jackson be as appreciated in this era with social media and being able to see everything that he did? I think that's kind of how it's, It's made us not as attached. And I say us, probably people that just don't follow it as closely. So I bring that up to say that I think it will bring an interest level to people that might not be the biggest Olympic people. I mean, I like following Usain Bolt. When there's certain like players, there's certain athletes, I liked following that. Michael Phelps, right? Things that he was able to do. I enjoy watching the Olympics for hockey, the Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
This will certainly bring that attention and the excitement up. And I don't even think you have to necessarily be a Gamecock fan. I think from just an Olympic standpoint, if you're a football fan and you watch this young man, right? You could be a Tennessee fan, you could be a Georgia fan. You see what he does in the field. And then he's able to go out there, okay? And this is obviously the next couple of years, if he's able to qualify and be an Olympian, I think it just brings more eyeballs because, again, there might be people that aren't necessarily Gamecock fans or not necessarily Olympic fans or track and field, whatever the case may be. But because they're football fans, you gain a different audience. It's kind of like, Saturday Night Live when they have different guest hosts. You might not be a fan of Saturday Night Live, or you might not tune in all the time. But because you see, I'm making this up, Dave Chappelle hosting, you might want to tune in that night.
Yeah.
So that's where I would compare it to that. And as Lynn has brought up, yeah, they've had some tremendous female track and athlete Olympians as well. I mean, it's just there's a lot of talent in the state of South Carolina, either from here or that go through the university. This is what I want to bring up, and I'm glad you brought up the track and field.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as I've said before, and this is where I want to end it on. Curtis Fry, legend. And I think a lot of people understand that, okay? They understand Curtis Fry and the impact he's had at South Carolina, right? A couple of things I want to bring up about Curtis Fry.
Mm-hmm.
Curtis Fry was the very first African-American head coach, any sport, hired at South Carolina. He was the first to win a national championship, too. Okay? Curtis Fry, first African-American head coach at USC in 2002. He was the first to win a national championship. That alone, historic. Throw on the fact of some of the things we've talked about. He's coached 28 Olympians, has coached 14 of those 28 have gone on to win medals in the Olympic Games. I say all this because people that have been following South Carolina that are from this area, they understand the impact Curtis Fry has had on the community and at USC as a whole. But what's going to happen, and I'm so damn happy for him, and he mentioned it, he's not stupid, he's not naive. There's going to be more people this year, kind of like a Tebow effect, if you will, with the freaking Fireflies, right? There's going to be more people covering track and field when Nicholas Harbor is there than there has been in quite some time. ESPN very likely will be coming out more than they have in recent years. So I say that because, number one, I'm very happy for South Carolina's track and field program because it's going to bring more exposure. And as he mentioned, when I asked him about the facilities, because they've done a great job of giving a facelift, Ray Tanner and the athletic department have done a great job with investing into the track and field program. As Curtis Fry mentioned, he's like, there's going to be more eyeballs here. You're going to have to put some more lipstick on, the bill. You're going to see upgrades because of the impact. If there's more people around, they're going to want to make that program. They're going to want to make those facilities look even better. So I'm very happy for the student athletes that are part of the track and field program, but I'm very happy for Curtis Fry because, again, in the track and field community, people know how legendary he is. People that have been at USC, people that are from this area, they understand how legendary he is. But it's really, really going to put his name out there more. Never mind how that's going to impact with recruiting, which is obviously, it goes without saying. But I'm just glad and happy for him because he deserves that. He deserves everything, and he's done it first class since day one.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. I've gotten to know Coach Fry from my time at the Daily Gamecock. I wrote a story about, the importance of him in this university in honor of Black History Month last year. And Coach Fry was a wonderful, wonderful interview. He's a fantastic person. He has reached out before to congratulate me on getting the Gamecock Central job. And I've reached out to him to interview him for other stories and whatever. Just a fantastic human. And he talked about it in his presser too. He said, I was thinking about retiring, but then, Coach Beamer brought this to me, and he's a generational talent, an absolute generational talent. Those aren't my words; they're Coach Fry's words. And I think, he said it shot some life in him when Nick committed. And so I think, I feel so great for Coach Fry, honestly, because he deserves this, right? He has put so much effort into this university, and he's such a good man. And I think Nick, being able to run track, gives him something to look forward to and build on top of. And I think it's huge for this track and field program, and it's going to give Coach Fry a happy send off, if you will, because I would assume he will finish up his tenure after Nick is done. Like it couldn't have happened to a better person, Mike, because Curtis Fry is the example of everything South Carolina sports should be. And he's just fantastic human. Couldn't have happened to a better person. Coach Fry, man, he's the man. And I'm really happy for him.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that, intern Joe. I've had the chance to get to know Curtis over the last couple of years. And just like I said, just an outstanding human being. The knowledge he has in track and field, it is truly second to none. I mean, he also trained Michael Jordan back in the day, for crying out loud, when it came to developing his speed. I mean, that just goes to show the impact he's had, not just on track and field athletes and some of the other athletes that have gone through South Carolina, but some of the athletes that didn't go to South Carolina, some of the athletes that weren't part of track and field. So big get for football, but a very big get for Curtis Fry as well. We'll wrap it up with this. Scott says, what does Beamer's success do for Tanner? Carolina seems to have women's basketball, football, tennis, and hockey succeeding. Track and field should be. So, and Scott, you may already know this, but just for those people that don't know, hockey, unfortunately, it's not a NCAA sport. So Tanner really doesn't have anything to do with that. But shout out to Club Hockey. Club Hockey's doing a great job. Club Lacrosse too. Give them a shout out. I think I will say this about Ray Tanner. He's in a position where, especially because of his success as a baseball coach, which will live on forever. I mean, what he does as an athletic director, in my opinion, will never change what he did as a coach. You see it in professional sports all the time, right? I mean, Danny Ainge, phenomenal basketball player for the Celtics, numbers retired. He's over there towards the end of his tenure. Things started to go south, okay? And fans weren't happy with him, but that doesn't take away the fact that he's one of the greatest Celtics to ever play. So I say that because with Tanner, that number is going to always be in the outfield, right? His number is always going to be retired, or jersey, whatever the heck they call it at South Carolina. But I bring that up because I feel like, yes, there's plenty of things that you can look at and say, okay, he's dropped the ball here, or, he's could have done a better job with this, or, that's part of it. That's part of it. But there are a lot of things that he's done good. And whenever his time is up as an athletic director at South Carolina, I think USC is going to be in a very good position when you talk about some of those programs that you mentioned: football, women's basketball, tennis. I mean, you go down the list, that whoever that next athletic director is going to be, they're going to be in a good situation because of some of the things that Ray Tanner was able to figure out. Now, are there some issues still with some other sports? No question about it. But again, I mean, if that was the case, if everything was going to be sunshine and rainbows across the board, I mean, shoot, no coaches would ever get fired in college sports if that was the case. It's not as simple as that. And you look at just some of the success USC has had. We talked about with Curtis Fry. I mean, that's a position that he's held for what, 20 something years. I mean, that's another position that gets overlooked, is being able to provide the facilities to help coaches like that so they want to stay. Curtis Fry, I mean, goodness, if he wanted to go anywhere else, he could. really, over the last couple. He can go where the heck he wants. He's that talented of a coach. You need to give him a reason to stick around. So I think it's a part of it. Intern Joe, always a pleasure, buddy.
Absolutely.
Everyone that tuned in tonight, we had a very big audience tonight. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. If you missed any of our program, head on back to our YouTube page, Gamecock Central. If you're not a subscriber already, sign up. It's free. Hit the little bell icon. So anytime that we do a GC live show, not just with us, but Wes, Chris, Colin Taylor, you guys do a basketball show on Sundays. You can listen to the Hard Foul on Sundays with intern Joe, Chris Welbon, who does an outstanding job covering women's basketball, as well as Colin Taylor. Follow along, okay? Gamecock Central, it's only getting bigger and better, okay? More video, more written content. I promise you, it's only getting bigger and better. So be sure to head on over to Gamecock Central's YouTube page, and we'll also have this on Gamecock Central's podcast as well. And if you want to listen to my voice tomorrow, which if you do, God bless you, I'll be in studio with Jay Phillips and the 107.5 game. 5 the game. Can't even say that. 5 the game gang. Should have picked a different word there. So I'll be on with them in the afternoon around 1 o'clock. I'm sure there'll be plenty to still talk about from this today, and I'm sure we'll look ahead to the future. Intern Joe, appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Go get yourself a beer, buddy, okay?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
We'll be back next Tuesday. We'll get back into the swing of things with Talking Tuesday nights. Obviously, this was a special National Signing Day edition. Everyone have yourself a good Wednesday night, and we'll see you in less than a week.
Thank you, everybody.